Hi and welcome to Brick Arena. If you're new to the channel, my name's Keith. I'm a full-time Lego seller selling on Bricklink, Brickowl and eBay. And on this channel, I give you an insight into my life as a Lego seller through my weekly vlogs, my live streams and my tip videos such as this one. Now, in this video, I'm going to cover what you should consider when buying another Bricklink store. Buying a store can be a big decision no matter what the size of the store is, whether it's £1,000 or £10,000. Buying up other stores can be an effective way of building inventory, gaining storage and increasing lots for your own store. But you must proceed with caution and assess the purchase in detail. In this video, I'm going to cover what you need to look for in assessing whether the purchase is a worthwhile one or not. But first, let's think about why you want to buy a store. You should consider whether it's the best use of your money or not, because you could be better off spending the money on new Lego sets to part out, buying from the pick-a-brick wall, or investing in new stock or new sets rather to sell at a later date. Think about what it is you want to achieve by buying the store. Is it that you just want to increase your overall item count? So you're just buying other stores to grow the store inventory? Is it that you want to specifically look for lot count increases? One of the best ways of attracting sales is having as broad a lot count as possible. So it might be that you just want to grow that lot count. Or maybe it just looks like an absolutely great deal and you'd be silly to miss it, So that's a really worthwhile reason as well, to be honest, and was actually the case for me in my own recent store acquisition. Now, if you're new to Bricklink selling, buying another store can be a good entry point to getting up and running quickly, and it comes with some benefits. You'll typically obtain storage along with a varied selection of stock, but keep in mind that the storage that you get is going to be the choice of the previous store owner, not yours. And it may not be to your liking and may not fit your plans or existing storage. This is one of the reasons I think that a lot of people end up with a real mishmash of storage solutions as their store grows. Buying a store when you're completely new to Bricklink, though, can be fraught with danger because you're really not going to be experienced enough to know whether the purchase is a good one or not. Therefore, I think that buying existing stores is really for existing store owners who've been around the block a time or two. So first of all, where do you find stores for sale? You'll usually see stores for sale on various Bricklink seller forums, Facebook groups, Discord channels, and some other Lego groups. But you might also see them on eBay or other related Lego forums. Usually the seller is looking to move the store quickly once they've made up their mind to sell. So they will cast a pretty wide net when advertising. Now, you need to think about what you actually need from the seller. And this, I think, is one of the most important things. Typically, seller ads will show a few pictures of the store, typically of their organizers, but they may also include screenshots showing the inventory value and information on the number of items, lot count, and of course an asking price. Use the information to get a good feel, but be careful not to take the information at face value. It's important that you look at what's on offer in more detail. So I'd recommend reaching out to the seller, expressing your interest, but asking for some of the following information. First of all, ask whether the store is now closed for business or not, because if not, the inventory is going to keep changing as they continue to make sales while they're negotiating. So that's a real key thing to understand. Ask for a brick store file. Brick store is your number one tool as a seller. And having a brick store file is absolutely critical in assessing the store acquisition in detail. Now, they might offer you an Excel file or a PDF, but push back on that. You really need the brick store file so that you can slice and dice it and really get to grips with what the content of the store is. Now, ask for more photos, as many as possible. You know, they've probably given you, 2 or 3 photos in the listing, but ask for as many as possible. If they've got bulk for sale in there, ask for pictures of the bulk, maybe even outside and inside the tub if possible. And I know that this sounds like you're asking for a lot, but if they're keen to sell, they're going to want to do as much as they can to give you the information. Now, another useful thing could be a video. Ask them to go around just with the smartphone, taking a video of the store, the way it's organized, opening a few drawers here and there to show you the contents and how they organize things. Sometimes you can get misled by the organizers, looking organized from the outside. They've got drawers, you have a preconception of how they put their items in the drawers. But you might find that drawers are all a single part in a drawer, which is great. You might find that they're mixed, which is a little bit more problematic because you'll have to sort those out depending on how you're going to store your stock in the future. Ask for a list of the organizers and other equipment that are included in the sale. So when you're just looking at pictures, you don't necessarily know how many actual cabinets there are on offer. So just make sure that you're getting that information. And also, if there's things like sealed sets included, ask for an inventory of the sealed sets, or at least a quickly scribbled list of what those sets are, so that you can assess their value. And you want to know if they're in good condition or not, or whether they're just going to be useful for part out. And of course, crucially, you're going to need to know the seller location, because you're going to need to make a decision on, whether it's feasible for you to collect the store, which is the most likely scenario. Ideally, I'd recommend getting on a call with the seller, having an open discussion rather than an email exchange. Things can be quite cold and misinterpreted through email, so I would really recommend getting on a call, preferably a video call, so you can see the person on the other side. But of course, not everyone is going to be comfortable with that. Now, it's probably important to touch on what's not included in the store purchase for those new or where this may not seem obvious. But when you're buying a store, you're literally just buying its physical assets. So you're buying its inventory, you're buying its storage, you're buying its equipment. You're not buying the store name, you're not buying the previous seller's feedback or their order count or any of that kind of information. It's purely a physical transaction. So let's move on to analysing the Brickstore file that you've received. Now, analysing the Brickstore file is the single most important part of assessing the store's worth, in my opinion. And it's important to do lots of checks and also keep in mind the initial reason for buying the store. Was it to increase lots? Was it for item count purely, etc.? So the first thing to do with the Brickstore file is to reprice it. Typically, sellers are going to probably price the Brickstore file at an advantageous price to them, let's say. So at least 6 months average, possibly slightly higher. So it's important that you do a repricing of the Brickstore file at the current 6 month average. And what you need to keep in mind is if that you normally list at the 6 months average plus or minus something. So let's say you normally sell at 10% below the 6 months average, then you need to adjust to those prices so that you know the worth of the stock to you. So in that case, rerun the pricing at the 6 month average minus the 10%, and that's the store value to you. It doesn't really matter what the previous seller thinks it's worth. You're assessing it from the valuation from your perspective now. Next, I would sort the file by item quantity and have a look through it for any anomalies. So it's not uncommon to see high volume, low sales potential items. So if you've got I don't know, something like one of the things I had were thousands and thousands of quarter tiles, for instance, in a single color, in huge volume. And I would recommend, unless you think they're really worthwhile items, remove them from your valuation, because if you don't think they're worthwhile, then just discount them. You know, you don't have to kind of include them in your assessment of the sale. Now, one of the next important things you need to do is check which lots match up with yours, so that you can assess how many additional lots you're going to be adding to your store. So the way to do this is to clear the remarks field on the entire Brickstore file. Then import your own Brickstore file and merge the remarks field into the store acquisition file. That way, you're going to now have in the remarks field the draw numbers of your own stock. Then you can sort the file by remarks and do a count of the items that match your lots. Sounds complicated, it's really not that difficult. This is the best way to figure out how many lots the acquisition file has that match your own inventory, and that's how you're going to know how your lot count is going to increase or not. You also want to look at the difference between new and used stock. So you can sort your Brickstore file by the condition of new or used, and that's going to have an impact on you depending on what kind of seller you are, whether you prefer new, whether you prefer used. But it's good information to have so that you know the percentage split, because it may be that in your own store you're going to have to reorganize, because you may have a small section of storage for used and a large section for new, and if the majority of what you're going to be buying is used, then you're going to need to store that somewhere. So you need to be thinking about those kinds of things. Another useful thing is to look at the proportion of inventory split between parts, minifigures, and sets. So that you can just understand that difference. If you're someone who's keen on minifigures and this store is entirely parts and very few minifigures, very few minifigure parts even, then that's information that you need to know. Now look also for a prevalence of slow moving stock. One of the things to think about is that usually when someone is selling up, they're going to probably put some sales on or something before they advertise. So they're going to be running down a lot of their more common and more popular items. And it could be that what you're left with is a lot of odd colours or odd parts, etc. So have a look through the file, looking for those kind of items, looking for high volume items that might have come from pick-a-brick walls that will be in abundance in other stores, and just try and assess how quickly those parts are likely to move. Now, it could be useful to get an average value for each category of the inventory as well. So you could break it down by minifig parts, for instance, or I don't know, slopes, or you could break down and get an average lot count in each of those areas. There are lots and lots of ways you can slice and dice the Brickstore file, and that is the real benefit of having the file. Now, of course, all of this analysis takes time and effort, but if you don't do it, then all you've got left is gut feel, and that's going to really come down to how comfortable you are with your gut feel versus having, hard analytics. Now, inventory accuracy is a really difficult thing to assess when you're looking at buying a store. Although you've got a brick store file, you really get somewhat of the mercy of the seller still. You still don't know how accurate that stock is. And there's no real way of telling. All you can do is look at the pictures they've sent, look at any videos they may have sent, and just try and get a feel for whether that looks like it matches up with the kind of quantities that are in the file. Now, you've got all of this information, so now you need to assess how much you really want to pay for this. Now, most sellers use a rule of thumb of around 25 to 30% of the inventory value. Now, some sellers are going to be horrified by that. I've been approached by people who want to sell their small store, and they're expecting 50% of the value of the store, and it's just not realistic. If you think about when you're building inventory as a seller, typically you're looking for sets that you're going to part out at 3x times the value. And so similarly, people who are buying stores are going to be wanting a minimum of 3x to 4x of the value of the store. Now, of course, you're going to have to probably factor in some extra value for anything else that's included. If there are sealed sets, if there are things that are not catalogued, if there's bulk, then you need to come up with a figure that you're prepared to pay per kilo for the bulk. So you'd want to know what the weight of the bulk is that's being sold, and then whether your preferred price for bulk is £5 a kilo, £6, whatever. Then you can add that into the valuation. But you also need to think about what storage is included. Although I must say, again, I've had people approach me with stores, and they've had storage that I'm just not interested in. So you either need to discount the value of those storage units if they're not worth anything to you, or look at what their resale value is if you can resell them, and factor that into the sale as well. Now, the next thing to think about is logistics, because store owners are going to be located all over the country, and you need to think about how far away that is from you. What are you going to need to pick up the store? In fact, are you picking the store up? Is it going to be delivered? You're going to need to consider van hire, fuel costs, all of those things all factor into how much it's going to cost you to acquire the store. It's not just about the actual inventory. There is additional costs. In my case, I was buying a large store, and I needed to rent a container to put the store into. So I had to organize the container in advance and think about that ongoing overhead of having a container to store the inventory that you're buying. Now, don't underestimate the weight of the Lego either. Now, if you've got bulk and it's been weighed for you, you'll have an indication of that. But it's more difficult to estimate the weight of the organizers with full Lego in, etc. And this was one of my scariest things with my acquisition, where I'd literally filled a van full of Lego right to the brim. And I was so worried driving it back home because it was so low on the axle. I was worried about being pulled over. I was worried about damaging the axle, so do consider that. And, again, once you've got the store, where are you going to put it? So again, in my case, it was a container. Make sure you've got room available in your existing space if that's where you're going to put it. I'm not sure about you, but my wife wouldn't be keen on me stacking tons of organisers in the front room, for instance, while I get organised in the store. So, you know, you need to think about that. Now, of course, this is going to depend on the size of the store that you're buying. If it's a relatively small store, it's not going to be that big a deal. But if it's a large store like mine was, and for those who don't know about my store acquisition, I'll put a link to the video, but it was around 650,000 catalogued parts, 350 kilos of bulk, and much more beyond that. Yeah, it was a really large acquisition for me, at least. There are some selling considerations, you know, so now that you've got the inventory, how are you going to sell it? You know, are you going to integrate it all into your store and sell it that way? Are you going to sell off the bulk? Is that your intention? You can get a quick return if you sell off the bulk that you've bought in kilo lots, maybe. Everyone's going to have their own approach as to how they're going to split it up. A lot of people, you know, when I made my purchase, would say, oh, why don't you sell the bulk off? You'll make a quick return. And it really depends on how quickly you want to get your money back. In my case, I wasn't in a super rush. I recognized that for me, it was a long-term investment. It's going to take a long time to catalog and integrate the stock into my store. Now, in terms of integrating into your own store, how are you going to do that? I know that a lot of people seem to think it's just a case of getting the store's organisers, putting them into your store as they are, and you've got a brick store file and you just upload it to your existing store. I would caution against that very, very strongly. For me, I've took a much more methodical approach where I'm literally having to count every lot that I've purchased and then merge it into my existing store. Now, so that can be a lot of work, obviously, but it's the only way to know that the inventory is accurate. If you just upload someone else's file, you've really no idea how accurate it is, and it will cost you so much time when you come to pick orders and you find that things aren't there. So think about how you're gonna integrate it. It really is a big factor, and also it comes back to that split of new and used, etc. How are you going to be organized? If you're going to end up with a different split to what you might have at the start. So for me, for instance, going back to my acquisition, I was predominantly new parts in my store, and with the acquisition, I was really flipping that and becoming or intending to become a much bigger used parts seller. And that meant a lot of reorganization, making sure that I had space or cabinets for the used items to go into. So, you know, do consider that. So you've evaluated the store, you've come up with a number, you've given the number to the seller and agreed a price, and now you're going to need to pay for the store. And I think, you know, how you do that is important. Obviously, you don't want to be handing over any money until you've actually physically seen the store and really are there to collect and have it in your possession. But the store owner may want a small deposit to hold the stock for you, depending on how quickly you're going to be able to get there and pick the store up. But you also need to think about how you're going to actually transact that money, depending on how much it is. Now, if it's a small store and it's only, you know, hundreds or 1,000 or two, then you could even do that in cash. But I would always strongly just recommend a bank transfer. Do it on site as you're collecting the stock. You know it's gone. you know it's been received, etc. As you can see, there's lots to think about when buying a store, and it is a big decision, and one that you shouldn't take lightly. But it's a great experience, you know, it's a lot of fun. It can give you a real boost in terms of you know, how you're feeling about selling. I know it came at a right time for me, because I was feeling a little bit sort of dejected with my store before the acquisition, you know, where I wasn't getting a lot of new things in. Sales were starting to slow because I wasn't refreshing the inventory enough. So it was a real boost for me, mentally, and from a sort of business perspective, you know, to have that increase, a mass increase in inventory, was great. Now I wish I could have got it integrated quicker, but you know, it's good to do things properly, I think. And as I said earlier, there's huge risk if you just take the previous seller's word for what there is in stock. So I hope you found that information useful. If you're thinking about buying a store, good luck, and do your due diligence, and I'm sure that everything will work out for you and the seller of the store. So until the next time, thanks for watching. Please, if you enjoyed the video, click the subscribe button and give me a like, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye for now.